Welcome into a virtual Studio A. As you can see, we are not in the real Studio A because that is based in Dallas, Texas. And if you followed any of the weather from the past 48, 72 plus hours, you would know that Texas is being referred to as Dalaska right now because it is completely frozen in ice. But that being said, I'm Maria Trivelpiece. That's Kyle Youmans. We're still bringing you All American virtually from our homes, and Kyle's in a hotel at the Senior Bowl right now. So we're
I
in all
am.
different places. But no, nonetheless, we have All American for you.
Yeah, here's the thing. There's not a ton of Senior Bowl participants that played in the American Conference, but I was at the Shrine Bowl and I was pushing for Eli Heidenreich and Robert Henry and some of the other guys that were from Navy and UTSA and ECU. Anthony Smith was there. So I've been putting my NFL draft hat on the last couple of weeks, but glad to get back to basketball. Hope everybody is staying safe if you're in the Dallas area. I know there's a lot of listeners from within the Dallas area. Hope everybody's staying safe this week. It's been crazy in terms of travel and in terms of the roads. Decided to play it safe and do it remotely, and then by that point, I was already in Mobile anyway, so it worked out this way. So stick with us this week. We'll be back in Studio A next week, and we'll have it all taken care of for you. But we still have plenty to talk about here, Maria, as we take a look at some of the standings in men's basketball these last 2 weeks. I can't believe, you know what? I can't believe it. I'm gonna completely switch gears here. This is the American Conference. We've seen this before, and we've seen how this can happen. How teams like Tulane, the last time we talked on this show, was undefeated in conference play, and now they go sliding all the way back down, and they're in the middle of the pack. And then you've got teams that are rising. How about Tulsa, who's on a winning streak? You've got UAB falling. You've got FAU rising. I mean, there's been so much movement over just the last 2 weeks, but that's what we've come to anticipate here in the conference, right?
Well, I agree with you, Kyle. I don't think I'm actually surprised. I say, oh my goodness, I can't believe it. But yes, I can believe it. Florida Atlantic was rising. I still think they are rising. We're going to talk about them in just a little bit. But then they fall to South Florida, who I think is playing some of their best basketball right now.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, a team like Tulsa, who we were like, oh, they started off really hot. The last time we talked, they had just lost 2 games in a row. Now they're climbing back in those American Conference standings. And when we talk about men's basketball 2 weeks from now, this can be completely flipped and switched, and we'll be saying the same thing. So definitely not surprised, but more excited about the parity within the conference.
Yeah, I completely agree. And some of these teams are teams that we've anticipated, right? Where we talked about it in the open and then the preview show with Eric Conkle and Tulsa. I mean, I told you from the moment I saw them playing against New Mexico State in non-conference play, I had that game earlier this year. I looked at them and said, hey, that's a contender. John Jakus and Florida Atlantic, that's a contender. Then you looked at North Texas and Memphis, and these are two teams that traditionally have been powers in this conference, at least as of recent memory for North Texas. And they don't have the same punch that they've had in years past. Doesn't mean they're bad basketball teams, but just right now they don't have that same oomph that they've had in the past. And Memphis is trying to figure out some of the youth. North Texas is trying to figure out some of their scoring, but there's a lot of potential still with those two rosters. And I think Tulane's kind of going through a little bit of a rough patch in that same regard as well. We're going to get into all of that, but let's start with Florida Atlantic, Maria, because that's a team that has lived up to the expectation. A team that was picked sixth in the American preseason poll. They're currently tied for first with that 6-2 record overall. John Jakus in this Florida Atlantic team have been rolling outside of that last game against South Florida where they fell to the Bulls 89-75. And in my opinion, I think that's just more of South Florida playing incredible basketball at home as opposed to Florida Atlantic falling flat.
Well, you said that they're living up to expectations. I would honestly argue that they're exceeding expectations because you mentioned them being picked sixth in that preseason poll. And I think the thing with Florida Atlantic is they just have so many different people who can do a lot of different things. We talked to Kaden Carlisle already on this show, but you have players like Devin Vanderpool, Devin Williams.
Yeah.
They have a lot of different scorers. And I think another great thing about Florida Atlantic is John Jakus focuses a lot on defense. When Kaden Carlisle was on the show, he said that's something that they've harped on a lot within the culture of their program because defense travels. And we've seen that, especially in that first half against South Florida. Again, I know they lost, but that was a big defensive battle that kept them in that game. And so I think that that combination with really good defense and multiple people who can score the basketball, along with good coaching. We've talked about the way John Jakus recruits and the way that he coaches his teams. I think it puts the Owls in a good spot, especially at this point in the season.
You even just look at the scoring margin and how much they put points on the board. They're averaging 83 points per game. They're third in the conference in points per game so far, but they do it in an efficient way. I mean, they shoot 47% from the field. They shoot 35% from beyond the arc. These are good numbers for any collegiate basketball team, no matter what the area is. I love what you mentioned in Vanterpool. I mean, he's averaging 16 a game, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. He does a little bit of everything. He's one of the top guys in the conference in terms of steals and blocks as well. I mean, he's just all over the floor. And when you've got a guard like that, and he's just a sophomore, but he's a guard with length. And we talked about that length. Ah, man, I love the way that John Jakus built this team, because they've got these big guards, 6'4", 190. He can do a number of different things. There's that positionless basketball, except it's not positionless basketball. They've got their 3 big guards in Vanterpool and Carlisle and Elohim. And then you turn around, you've got some really good forwards with Pendleton and Williams. I mean, they've got a consistent lineup that they can trust across the board. And I think that's one of the things that Florida Atlantic really relies on, is the interchangeability and the versatility of their roster and the way that it's been built. You know where that's going to play a factor, Maria?
Where is it going to play a factor?
March. It's going to play a factor in March, when you need depth and you need rotations and you need guys that may be banged up to play less minutes, so somebody else has to take those minutes. That's where Florida Atlantic is dangerous. And I think, like I said, in that game against South Florida, it was a bit of an anomaly for me, because they had just come off of really rattling off some big-time wins over the last couple of weeks and playing their best basketball as of late. I expected that to be a lot closer than it was. Credit to South Florida, because they did what they needed to do. Talk about the Bulls here in a second. But I look at this Florida Atlantic team, and I can't help but think this is the same build and the same type of team that in Conference USA back in 2023 made a run to the Final Four. I don't know if they're a Final Four team, but I certainly think they have a shot to make the tournament. Where do you see them in terms of your expectations now that you've gotten to see their gameplay over the last few months?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that question, because I was about to answer it before you even asked it. When you mentioned that length and that competitiveness, especially in March, I think that's the key difference maker, because you need that depth and you need the length. I think that we love a Cinderella story, as Florida Atlantic was when they were back in Conference USA, that made it to the Final Four. You love a Cinderella story like that. But in order for that to happen, you need to at least have the height and the length to compete with some of the bigger programs in the country. I think Florida Atlantic has that. Now, can they keep up the consistency? I think that's something that could help them a lot down the road. And so I think that there really is no ceiling for this team if they play the kind of basketball that they're capable of playing. Going back to that South Florida loss, I do think it's an anomaly, and I do think they played the Bulls well, especially in the first half. I think that if they can continue to keep up the way that they've been able to score the basketball with a lot of different pieces, it could be a different person on every night, along with that defense that I talked about earlier, because I do think they do a pretty good job of rattling opponents, and that gets them off rhythm. And so I think those couple of things can really propel the Owls far. Now, they still have to get through a grueling slate in the American Conference. We've seen this is a league that everybody beats everybody. We can't, one week we think it's one team running away with it, the next week it's somebody else. And so they have a rematch with Memphis coming up. That's their next game on Thursday, which last time we were on the show, we talked about that little back and forth on social media. So now that's the reverse for me, because now Memphis is going to feel a little bit more of that pressure, that pettiness, that they want to go after Florida Atlantic. They beat them once. And then right after that, they have East Carolina, who's also trying to figure it out. So I think that this week is also pivotal for Florida Atlantic. How do they respond to that South Florida loss is my big question going into this week.
Yeah, that's going to be big. Let's talk about that game, though, because South Florida, you know what they do well? They stay petty on social media, and they get a little bit of a shot into Florida Atlantic on the social media side. I know you love this, especially, Maria. You love the pettiness.
I do love pettiness. I know it's probably like not a good thing, but it's like great, honestly, being somebody who works for the conference, because I applaud all pettiness. And so I'm not like against one team or the other.
All petty is welcome.
All petty is welcome. And so if you bring the petty, we will highlight it on the show and I will applaud it. I have no ill will towards, like in this case, Florida Atlantic, or when Florida Atlantic did it to Memphis. No ill will. I love it. Bring the pettiness. And look, Florida Atlantic had their chance to be petty. Now South Florida's giving it back. So it's all equal. So I applaud it. Let's keep it up. Everybody keep working on it. Love the social team's effort on this.
So you talk about the ups and downs and the ebbs and flows that you have over the course of a season, and South Florida has done that this year had that double OT loss against UAB. They had the OT loss against Wichita State, but then sandwiched in between that are three big wins. East Carolina at Tulsa, where they took Tulsa to town 93-78. They beat North Texas at the Super Pit. I mean, these are games that are tough, but they didn't make them look tough. Then you run into that overtime loss against Wichita State, but they've bounced back in a big way. So, at least in the early going, it looks like South Florida is one of, if not the most talented teams in the conference, but they are destined to have an occasional downfall. And we've seen that over these first really 2 months or month, I guess, of conference play. The number one thing I have to keep pointing out, because I said it once, I'm saying it again, Izaiyah Nelson is one of the best and most dynamic players in this conference, especially when he plays well. The South Florida Bulls play well. You look at the loss that they had against Wichita State. He was held to 7 points, 9 rebounds, which he's averaging a double-double in conference play right now for a reason. 32 minutes of action. He went just 2 of 8 from the field. If you can limit him, you limit South Florida. But that's not an easy task. That sounds so much easier to say than it is to actually do, because he takes over in games. 16 points against UAB, 15 points, 12 rebounds against Florida Atlantic. And then you flip it to the backside of that, and in that 89-75 win for South Florida over FAU, he helped dynamically take away the forward position from Florida Atlantic. Pendleton was held to just 3 points over 13 minutes. You had Williams, who was just 2 points over 21 minutes. I mean, they didn't play well, and they shot 1 for 4 and 1 for 5, respectively, from the field, because he plays an incredible brand of defense in the low block, and he's incredibly physical. He wears you down, and that's what South Florida does as a team. And that's why you see them have the success that they've had over the course of the season, because they can have anybody that can go off in any given time, whether it's Pinion or Brown or Enos. It could be anybody in the backcourt. And then you got the consistency of Izaiyah Nelson. This is a dangerous team in South Florida.
Well, I think differentiating, I was going to say deciding, the differentiating factor for South Florida will be if they can figure out how to win basketball games when Izaiyah Nelson isn't getting his double-double or scoring in the way that he can. Because here's the thing, Kyle, like you mentioned some of those other names like Wes Ennis, or I mean, we're going to talk about Josh Omojafo in just a little bit. Even like a CJ Brown and a Joseph Pinion, they all have the capability to score the basketball as well. And so I think the scary thing, if I were opponents of South Florida, would be to think about, okay, what happens when all of those other guys figure out how to put it together when Nelson isn't performing at his highest clip? Now, 9 times out of 10, he's going to be, and then you have all those other players that can help. But I think that the other guys are really good if they can collectively come together in those down games, and that's going to make them even scarier. They're already leading the American in offense, and I think that the reason why is because they do have players like Izaiyah Nelson. They have a Joseph Pinion who could shoot the basketball. They have so many different options that make them so dangerous when they're playing the teams. I mean, their 2 losses are in overtime. So I think that speaks a lot to the caliber of this program.
No, you're right. And I'm glad you brought up Josh Omojafo, a guy that, of course, from Canada originally, has found a home in South Florida. I don't blame him from coming from Canada,
Listen,
this time of year.
Absolutely not.
Easy money. But he's done much better as time has gone on, because you even think about the way that he ended non-conference play after kind of an up and down start in non-conference play. He ended with some consistency. Then he starts conference play, and he kind of goes, once again, ebbs and flows. Didn't play well against Tulsa, but as I just said, they didn't necessarily need it against Tulsa specifically. But then he's played really well since then. 18 against East Carolina, 17 against Wichita State, 15 against UAB. He's that other element of this team that if you don't have a consistent performance from Izaiyah Nelson, you do have a 6'5" guard. I've talked about it already. I like these big guards. Yeah. If you can have him step up from a rebounding element, from a scoring element outside of the forward spot, then all of a sudden I think you've got a little better spacing and you've got some competition between your own teammates, and that's exactly what he's done. What have you liked so far from Omojafo?
I think you bring up a lot of good points, just the way that he distributes the basketball as well. I think that the thing about South Florida as a whole is when one person isn't stepping up, other players do. And this just happens to be Josh Omojafo's turn to step up. We saw Wes and Enos do it before. And I think that he's stepping into his moment and finding some consistency. And one thing, and another point I was going to bring up about South Florida is what I really like about them is their resiliency. And I think Omojafo really exemplifies that because he'll have some games where maybe he isn't scoring in double figures and then he comes right back and does it again. And I think South Florida does that. Has done that in this season as a whole. You see, like where they had some losses, they lose in overtime, but then they come back and win a game. I think they also do it half to half. I mean, you were on the call for that North Texas game, and that first half it was very equally matched. That second half, South Florida
Yeah.
just dominated. So their resiliency to respond in after first halves, after things don't go their way, I think that's something I really like, and I think it's why this team can go very far, maybe even into March. We just talked about Florida Atlantic and their capability. I think South Florida has some of that capability as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. Excuse me as I get on my soapbox here for a second.
Okay, I'm gonna leave
I've
that
seen
for a
some,
second.
yeah, I've seen some slander on social media about the conference, and because they're looking around and Memphis isn't as good as they have been, and Wichita State isn't as good as they have been, and it's blaming the conference and the way that it stands. When you talk to these coaches, they're not saying that. They're saying, oh, there's competition across the conference. There's really good coaches across the conference, even out of the coaches that had left or been plucked by other programs over the last few years. It doesn't matter. There's still a lot of really good, talented players and coaches and staffs in this conference. You look at Florida Atlantic, they're up. South Florida, they're up. Temple. I mean, Adam Fisher still keeps the Temple Owls playing in the
Yeah.
right direction. Ron Hunter and Tulane started very hot, and even they couldn't right the ship initially to really solidify themselves early. Andy Kennedy and UAB, Eric Conkle and Tulsa. It doesn't matter. You look across the conference, and there's no let up, and that's why you're seeing all these teams end up 6-2 and 5-2, and how the conference has started the way that it has. That's not a knock against the conference. If anything, that's a compliment for the conference. And I think a team that's helping kind of raise awareness to that is the Tulsa Golden Hurricanes and Eric Conkle, and the way that they've rebounded after having a phenomenal non-conference slate, just running the table almost in conference play. And then you turn around and they hit a hiccup right at the jump at the start of the league play. They beat Rice, but then they lose back-to-back against North Texas and South Florida. Since then, we're seeing the Tulsa team that we anticipated to see.
Well, I want to kind of take this question back to you because I know I've asked you this before, and we've talked so much about this Tulsa team on this show already, but that beginning of the year, when you saw them play against New Mexico State, what was it that stood out to you that you were like, this is the reason why I think this team is the real deal? And then I'll get to my points as well, but I want to highlight that first because then I want to talk about the hiccups in between.
This is one of the most well-rounded basketball rosters I've seen at this level in quite some time. I mean, they entered that game that I called. They led the American in points per game, point differential, field goal percentage, three-point percentage, threes per game, free throw percentage, rebounding margin, assists per game, and assist to turnover ratio. That is 9 major categories that they led the conference in, and that was in non-conference play. They aren't much worse now that they are in conference play either. They can score, they can get up and down the floor. They play a pro brand of basketball. They got 3 or 4 guys that I would look at, and I do a lot of G League and NBA broadcasting as well. I would see them at the next level. I would not be shocked to be putting together preparation in the next few years and seeing Tulsa on my spotter boards, because that's how good they've been consistently. So it's all about the well-rounded ability and the talent level that they've got. We'll talk to Miles Barnstable later. He is a walking highlight reel. Miles Barnstable, can't wait to talk to him in a minute. David Green is a pro player just waiting to happen. Tylen Riley is a pro player just waiting to happen. And then Aid Popola, same thing. They don't have a weakness out in their starting 5. Now, they've needed to see some depth. That's the biggest thing I had a knock against them. I wanted to see some of that depth play. Well, guess what? They've got Jalen Lawal, who is the reigning freshman of the week in the conference, and he's been putting up 20-plus points on a regular basis, or up and down throughout the season. Miles Rigsby has been a guy as a junior and a transfer from Troy who's made a big impact too. So I really have been impressed with what Tulsa has done from a roster building standpoint. And all of that, I think, is starting to pay off for them now as we get into the middle of conference play.
And I think you also see too Eric Kunkel going into the portal and getting some of those players who have college basketball experience. I think David Green stands out to me. He comes over from Rhode Island. He had a few other stops along the way, but I think just having that experience and having that leadership on the team also helps, because when you're bringing in a lot of different new guys, you want somebody who's been here before, maybe not necessarily been at Tulsa before, but been in the world of college basketball before. And I think you see that in the way that he plays. He just has a really high basketball IQ when you watch him, and I think that feeds off of the other players. And then to your point about Miles Barnstable, a walking human highlight reel is the best way to describe him. I think he's on top plays like at least every other week, and that's just his dunks, right? Like, we're not even talking about his like normal scoring ability to find ways to make sure that his team wins basketball games. And so I think those two in particular are leading the way. But as you said, if Tulsa can continue to get a little bit more depth, which the roster has the capability to do so, they can see success as the season continues.
And another one of the teams that, of course, in the American has done exactly what Tulsa has been doing lately, which is play all-around basketball, is Wichita State. I mean, the Shockers, not shocking anybody at this point in time, team that was picked inside the top 5 in the American. I thought, and I'm going to be completely honest here, I thought that might have been a little bit high based on what we saw last year, but they can play a solid branded defense. They can continuously score the rock now, top 5 in the American in scoring at this point in time. I think Paul Mills has things going in the right direction there, Maria, and starting to click, winning 4 of their last 5.
See, I'm going to agree and disagree with you in that same statement, because I think when I first saw them picked in the top 5, the way that they finished the season last year, I think they won something like 6 of their last like 7 games. It was something ridiculous. I should know the number. And then they were kind of building on some of that momentum. They lost some key pieces, but I was like, oh, I like what Paul Mills is doing here. I agree with them being in the top 5. And then I watched them early on, especially in conference play, and I was like, I don't know if this is where they're going to be. Again, I apologize now because I take that back. They've won 4 of their last 5. They do look like they're clicking. It does look like Paul Mills has things going in the right direction. And because of the same reason that we talked about with a lot of these teams that are having success, Kyle, they have multiple people who are contributing. We're going to talk about Kenyon Giles in a little bit. Karan Boyd, you have Michael Gary Jr. There's so many different pieces that have contributed and can score on different occasions. And so I think Wichita is peaking at the right time because they're getting into that heart of conference play and they're performing well.
I think you're thinking about the 6-game winning streak that they had last year. It was right around the beginning of February.
Right.
So same timeline. They won 6 straight, and then they went 2 and 4 down the stretch. But they played really good teams. They played UAB, North Texas, and Memphis in 3 of those 4 losses. So, and those were the top 3 teams in the conference last season. So, yeah, I agree with you. And they played well in those games. They lost by 8 to UAB. They lost by 2 against North Texas. They lost by 3 against Memphis. And they were playing better basketball as of late. But even going into from last year to this year, I looked at it and I saw a team that returned just 1% of their scoring from last year and lost its top 9 scorers and 12 total letter winners from their team last year. They didn't have the Bells and the Beverleys and the Bosniaks and the Cortezes back this year, and they only have 2 returners that logged minutes. So I looked at it and said, wow, they did end the season great last year, but were the expectations to be a top 5 team maybe a little bit too high going into it? Now I'm saying I don't think that, because they have played phenomenal basketball as of late, and you can tell even just looking at the arena, looking at Koch Arena, whenever you look up there and you see what they're doing from a fan base standpoint, Wichita's starting to get around this team and it's starting to feel like Shockers basketball again. That is a tough place to play when it starts to look like that, and that's what we're seeing from Wichita State as of late. So I give Coach Mills a lot of credit for what they've been able to do. They also had the big win against South Florida, we mentioned earlier. They dominated Memphis. Now you got some tests coming up, though. You've got at Tulsa. That's a nationally televised game on ESPNU. You're at Tulane over the next few weeks. Then you get South Florida and Tulsa at home. You get Temple at home, Memphis on the road again, and then you end the season against Florida Atlantic at home. This is not an easy slate from here on out for what Wichita State's trying to do. But I don't think we can look at this Shockers team the same, especially when Giles is doing what he's doing as a possible player of the year type of performance in these mid-20s that he's putting up as one of the leading scorers in the conference.
Well, he's averaging what, 18.2, let me look up, 18.2 points per game. Yeah. And just in some of the last few games, he's had these 20-plus point performances. And I think that when you have that one player like that, we talked about it with South Florida and Izaiyah Nelson, if that one player can't be stopped and then you still have some other people who can score the basketball around them, it becomes a really difficult team to beat. And I think especially with the momentum Wichita State has, I think that plays a big factor in it as well. For me, I think the most difficult part of Wichita State's schedule is those next two road games, because I agree with you. Koch Arena is one of the coolest venues in the American. I mean, we had our volleyball championship there a season ago, and that was packed. It was awesome. And I think the community of Wichita really gets behind their teams. So if Wichita can get through these next two games, play the brand of basketball they've been playing, and then get back home, it gives them a better chance to continue the momentum. And again, as you said, Kenyon Giles is a really big part of that.
I think you're exactly right. And it's funny when you look up and you see the names that we've been talking about all year long on this show. And those are the leaders in the conference. Jordan Riley from East Carolina, Rowan Brumbaugh from from Tulane, Darian Ford from Temple. All those guys are there. Right in the mix is Kenyon Giles and what he's done this year from a scoring element. I think he's tremendous. He's a dynamic playmaker. He makes the guys around him better. And when you're shooting 41% from three-point land, you can expect to play at the next level, just to keep that in mind. So I think they go as much as he goes. He's one of those those veteran players that has continuously just improved across the course of his career, going now to his third separate school, but he's always put up points. And I think that's where Wichita State is going to continue to take steps forward. Let's talk about Temple. This is a team with the Temple Owls, Maria, that has played in some close games this year, and they find ways to win these close games. I know they put out a clip the other day of us talking about Temple on the social media side of things and how Adam Fisher's got things going in the right direction. It got some traffic because I think there's a lot of excitement up there in Philadelphia about what the Temple Owls are doing.
Well, I'm going to say it again. I think that they do have some excitement moving in the right direction. And I think a big reason why is because Adam Fisher is in his third year and he knows how to run this program in particular. I think that the biggest question mark Temple had when he first took over the program was how they were going to get it back to that prestige that it's had in all of the years that Temple has been a basketball program. And I think Adam Fisher has done such a great job of adjusting to this era of college basketball. He understands that he might not have guys for 3-4 years. He knows he has to develop them in a short amount of time, and that's exactly what he does. And I think that you can tell just by the way his players respond to him. I remember being at media day and you could just tell the camaraderie that he had with the two guys that were there with him. Like, he is a player's coach. They really like him. And because of that, he might get a guy that maybe would leave after a year to stay and develop even more. And so I think those behind the scenes things are what's contributing to them winning close games, because we talked about this. Oh my goodness, I forget. It wasn't Temple, but it was Charlotte. When we were talking about Charlotte men's basketball, how they're winning close games this year. Temple, in my opinion, is winning close games this year because they have that culture, that camaraderie, togetherness that pushes them and sets them apart in those tougher moments. And I think it was true of Charlotte and it's true of Temple as well.
You know what's kind of interesting for me, and I'm gonna be a little bit of a Debbie Downer here.
Ooh,
just
okay.
A little bit of a Debbie Downer, because we talk positively about these teams consistently on this show. We're part of the American Conference. We love our teams, and when they play well, we usually talk about them. So we're always going to talk from a general standpoint. I'm still not sold on Temple yet.
Ooh,
I'm
okay.
not sold there. Kind of like what
reasons.
I just talked about with Wichita State. I think I'm sold with Wichita State. I think they're a top 5 team in the conference. I'm not there with Temple yet. And the reason being is you're talking about these close games. That's great. They had a one-score game and a win against Charlotte, who's played really well so far. They had a single-digit win against East Carolina, a two-possession win against Rice, a two-possession win against UTSA. These aren't necessarily like convincing wins. And against UTSA, who hasn't been very good this year, Rice, who hasn't been very good this year, East Carolina, who hasn't been very good this year. We'll talk about them in a little bit. There's a reason behind it. But they're not blowing these teams out the way that maybe some of these other top teams in the conference are. The Florida Atlantics, the South Floridas, the Tulanes when they were playing well, the Wichita States now whenever they're firing on all cylinders. And then the one thing where I'm not saying Temple is a poor basketball team and they haven't been there yet. They played really well against those teams, against Memphis and against Florida Atlantic. They were right there in 1-score games or 2-score games against those two teams as well. So I think they play to their level of competition. I don't want to see that from Adam Fisher's bunch. And it's because I think they are talented and I think they have the product there because you have Ford and Tobias and two high-level scorers. I love watching Jordan Mason play. Ooh. I want to be very clear. San Antonio product. Jordan Mason is one of the top, I think he's top 100 in the country in terms of assists per game, 4.5 assists per game at the moment. He is a dice and deal type of point guard, guy that really sets everybody else up for success. And then he can be selfish and say, I'm going to take the rock myself and put up 12 points a game. So I still think they have the well-rounded ability there. I want to see it come together, and I want to see it come together consistently. And they're going to have the chance over these next couple of weeks to do that. Over their next 4 games, they've got Charlotte, which they've already won the first game of that, and they play them at home now. They've got South Florida at home. That's a huge test for them. Then they go on the road against East Carolina and against Tulane. So 4 games, 3 of which I could say are very winnable. One of which is going to be a statement type of game on national television on January 31st, ESPN2 against South Florida. Those are the games that I think Temple needs to showcase that they are here and they are here to stay. Because I'm excited for them. I just want to see a little bit more.
I think the best point that you made in all that, and I understand where your argument is coming from, and I'm not totally disagreeing with it. I think the point about playing to their level of competition just summarizes what Temple has been doing all season long, because even in their loss to Florida Atlantic, it was a 7-point loss. So if we're talking about Florida Atlantic being one of the top teams in the American, all right, Temple's right there. They're just like, they're losing by single digits, but they're also beating teams at the bottom of the American by single digits or a 1 or 2 possession game. So I think that is the best way to summarize this Temple team, is they're playing to the level of their competition. But as you said, if they want to continue to win and they want to be in the top half, they can't do that. I think you can't look past that Charlotte game. We're going to talk about Charlotte here in a bit. They're playing some really good basketball as well. But that South Florida game, I think, is the biggest test and maybe predictor for me of what this Temple team can be, because South Florida doesn't take any prisoners. They just get on you quickly. They score at a high clip. They shoot the basketball really well. So can Temple manage that? That's going to be my big one that I'm circling, because I think it'll tell me a lot about the Owls.
It's also okay for you to disagree with me, Maria. You can do that. You can disagree.
I know, but see, the problem is, and I hate to admit this, you are so, in grade school when they give you like the Fred way to write a paper where it's facts, reasons, examples, details. Have you ever used that motto? No?
Not that I'm aware of.
All right. So anyway, the whole point of it is when you were writing papers, the beginning of your paragraph, you put a fact, and then you gave reasons, examples, and details to back up that fact. And you actually do a very good job of that. So when you made your point and then you gave me your reasons, examples, and details, I was like, oh, you know what? That's a good point. So I kind of have to not totally disagree with you on that one. But anyway, I digress.
You can feel the fist pumps here from Mobile, Alabama. That's where the fist pumps are. That's where we're having some fun. I did actually look this up, and this is how much of a sicko I am when it comes to the American Conference and basketball season. I looked up how far away it would be to go this weekend, this Saturday, to go to the Charlotte Rice game in Charlotte. It's a little bit far for me from Mobile, Alabama, but that's okay. I'm not going to make it, but hey, that's a game that I was looking into going to, but I'll watch it on TV. It's another nationally televised game in the American Conference. This Charlotte team has been the pleasant surprise of the year for me so far.
Okay.
They're 2 losses in conference play against 2 teams that we just talked about as some of the best in the conference so far, Tulsa and Temple. They had a 2 overtime win against Wichita State. They had the 3-point win against East Carolina and Tulane, both the same exact score, which I just think is weird to look at on a schedule. They were both 73 to 70.
I'm like, is that right, or did I read it wrong?
Is that a typo, or is that a copy paste?
Like what's going on? Yeah.
It was real. And they played almost the exact same game, too, where Mingo led the way scoring-wise. And I think that's what makes me excited the most about Charlotte and a team that's still trying to prove themselves a little bit, is it's not just one player again, and you're seeing a common theme here in the American. it's not just one player. There are multiple guys that can lead them in scoring in any given night. It could be Mingo, it could be Bradford, it could be Conyers, it could be Bonk, it could be Harrison, Matting. I mean, there are all these guys that have led the team in scoring previously. So if that's the case, maybe they aren't out of place being tied for second in the American right now.
I have a philosophical question that
Yes,
I've
please.
been thinking about a lot. If
Okay.
Charlotte didn't have as bad of a season as they did last year, would we still be saying that this is a surprise? We're still not sold on them yet? Because I'm wondering, like, we just talked about teams that we think are really good, right? Like a Wichita State or, just different teams that Charlotte has beaten and done a good job against and has played well. So are we being, bias isn't the word, but are we like using that lens of what we saw Charlotte as last year to kind of cloud a little bit how good this team actually could be this year? This is my philosophical question, but
The answer to me is yes.
yeah.
Because you think back to how they entered the conference, and I said this in the past. I mean, this is a team that won the CBI in 2023, their final year in Conference USA, I think. They won the CBI. They had some really successful teams in Conference USA. Then they come into the American and they go 19-12, and they were significantly a middle of the pack team and played decent basketball in 2024. So then when they fell off the cliff a little bit last year and ended up as the 13 seed, the team that finished last in the American with a 3-15 record, I looked at it and said, this team may have just bitten off more than they could chew from a transfer portal or whatever it may be. I mean, they lost a lot of guys this past year too. I mean, they lost 6 players to graduation and another 5 to the transfer portal this past season. But the way that Coach Fern has really remade the roster this year is really impressive. I mean, you had Conyers, who had 2 seasons at South Carolina. You had a group that brought 21 seasons of college basketball experience across the board together in this new day and age of Charlotte basketball. So I think I'm with you. It shouldn't be a surprise, even though it kind of is, just because of how much they had to do to overturn that roster from last year to this year.
Yeah, I don't know. That was totally off the cuff too, because I was sitting here thinking about it, and when I was prepping my notes, I'm like they're doing well, and we
Yeah.
talked about Mingo, we've talked about some of those other scores, and I'm like, why do we keep saying that this is like we're not giving them the benefit of the doubt as we are maybe some other teams? But yeah, that's my philosophical question of the day, and I think maybe we were wrong on that one.
Well, maybe so, and we wouldn't be alone. I mean, we talked about guys taking steps forward, and you look at like Ben Bradford, for example, the leading scorer, was a returner from last year's team. He went from scoring 2.5 points a game last year to 14.5 here. That's a significant change
Yeah.
from his freshman to sophomore year. And remember what I like to say about these guards. I like big guards in this
Yeah.
conference, and they're six. He's 6'5", 200 pounds. He looks every bit of it, and he is a physical. He's athletic. He can move. He can shake. He can shoot. He can do a lot of different things. And so I think Bradford is one of those guys that you didn't expect it, but you did at the same time
Right.
take a step forward. Then you've got Dezane Mingo, who's been leading the team in scoring as of late. I mean, he was one of the leading scorers for Marshall last year, too, out of the transfer portal. So I think when you look at the tea leaves of how this all came together for Charlotte and how they are currently tied for second in the American, and they're 4-1 in games that they've been in close matchups so far, and they're winning those close games. The reasoning is there, and you can see the vision initially, but I think they've also benefited from some guys really taking a step forward, especially Bradford and what he's done this season. And then you got a guy like Anton Bonk, who was averaging 1.5 points per game for Providence over just 16 games last year. And now in 20 games, he started 19 of them. He's a double figure scorer too. So lots of guys stepping up and making impacts where they maybe didn't anticipate initially. They've got size, they've got athleticism. I mean, this is a team that's the real deal in the American.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see how the rest of the season plays out. You want to talk about a team that I know that has dealt with adversity this season? We talked about Charlotte dealing with it last year. This year,
Yes.
East Carolina really struggling with a lot of adversity.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember East Carolina's coming off of a season. I said this on their broadcast the other day. Uh, they're coming off of arguably the second best season in the history of East Carolina basketball. And Coach Schwartz, who I've gotten to know over the last couple of years, and he does a phenomenal job, I think, teaching and developing. That's one of the big things that has been really good. You see Jordan Riley this year and what
Yeah.
he's done. I mean, he's the leading scorer in the conference. He's the only one that averages over 20 points per game. There's a lot of talent there. It's his second year in the building after he comes over from Temple in an interconference switch from 2023, or excuse me, 24 with Temple. He goes to East Carolina last year, was a part of a big three there last year where they had RJ Felton and CJ Walker, and then they had Riley as kind of that third guy. But they were anticipating Jay Woodard to be the fourth guy last year, which he was, and then step up and be a double figure 15-point scorer a game this year. He gets hurt early in the year. You got guys in and out of the lineup. I mean, Dimitri Gardner, who was a pro level type of player and has been there for the last couple of years, he was banged up initially, has only played in the last 7 games. So they've had so many injuries to where they feel, and that's just scratching the surface in terms of the injuries. They turn around and they look at the way that they anticipated this roster to look after having 19 wins a year ago and being one of the best teams in the conference. I mean, they were top 6 in the conference when it was all said and done. First winning season since 2012. Coach Schwartz had everything going in the right direction. Now that he's in year 4, it felt like they needed to take a step forward, and they haven't done that. I'm here to tell all of the East Carolina fans, there is not a coach that I've talked to that I feel like I believe in more that is able to turn around a school than East Carolina and Michael Schwartz. I think it's a great fit. I think he has the resources. I think he has the team and the recruiting ability and the smarts to be able to anticipate what they're going to do. But when injuries played a factor this year, the number one thing he can control is effort and fight, and they've done both of those things. That's how they won a game against North Texas this week. So I thought it was the best time to bring it up. I mean, they won that game against North Texas with effort and grit and fight. Yes, it helps that you have a starter in Dimitri Gardner back in the fold. Giovanni Imajuru has been fantastic all season long. Transfer from George Mason. He's close to averaging double figures in both points per game and rebounds per game as well. So I look at him as he was supposed to be a key factor with all of the backcourt and the guards that they had coming in. But now they have a significant number of players that were anticipated to be 5, 6, 7 on the roster. And now instead they're having to play the 3, 4, 5 roles, you know? And so everything kind of trickles up and trickles back down. I really do look at East Carolina as a sleeping giant as long as Michael Schwartz is at the helm. And I think they're not done yet this year either. They're not done trying to make a run at this thing, and they needed one to fall. They had lost 7 straight, started 0-6 in conference play. They needed one game to really give them some mojo, give them some juice, and I think that game was against North Texas. So I want to revisit this in a month or two. And I'm not saying they're going to win the conference. I'm not saying they're going to win the tournament. But I do think with the talent that I've seen on that roster, led by a leader with as much of a high-end ceiling as Jordan Riley, I wouldn't be surprised if we're looking up and seeing this team as a middle-of-the-pack team at the end of the year and a team that possibly can make a run in the postseason as well. I do believe in the Pirates even after the slow start and some of the frustration and adversity they've had to deal with early on.
Well, I think if they can respond to that adversity, that's only going to help them as the season goes on, because if you go 0-6 in conference play, right? Anything else, once you start winning games, feels a little bit easier at least. Like it's hard to win college basketball games, like end of sentence. But I think if you can have guys continue that fight, I love that word fight that Michael Schwartz uses. I think if you can have guys continue to fight and you have players like a Jordan Riley who's kind of leading the way, I mean, he has been phenomenal. We talked about Miles Barnstable being a human highlight reel. Jordan Riley's a human highlight reel. We're going to have to tally it up at the end of the year who has more dunks in top plays by the end of it. But I also think the fact that Jordan Riley is still in East Carolina Pirates speaks to what you said about Coach Schwartz and the way that the guys buy into what he has to offer. I mean, Riley was phenomenal last season as well, and it's hard to keep good players in this era of college basketball. So the fact that he wanted to stay with Coach Schwartz, he wanted to stay in Greenville to help the Pirates win basketball games, I think speaks a lot to it as well. So I think, as you said, we'll revisit it in a couple months, but if they can build some momentum after this North Texas win, it might bode well for them as the year goes on, and that might help them get back on track.
I think they will. And there are a lot of teams that are trying to right the ship in the American. They are one of them. Here's some other teams that I think we should look at in terms of trying to turn it around. Tulane, of course, they've lost 4 straight after starting 3-0 in conference play. Memphis, a team that is now under 500 over the season and in conference play. UAB, I mean, UAB looked like a team early with their win over South Florida in double overtime that we anticipated. Andy Kennedy always has a team that's just rocking and rolling whenever conference play comes around. They're 3-4 in the American, and they haven't played at a high level or as high of a level as you would anticipate from the Blazers. And then North Texas, new coaching staff, same identity. They play an incredible brand of basketball on the defensive end of the floor. They got to find some scoring, and they're an interesting case too. They've had some incredible wins. They've beaten Tulane. They beat Tulsa. Then they turn around and they've lost to Wichita State, and they've lost to East Carolina, and they've lost to some of these games you probably wouldn't anticipate. So out of these 4 teams, which one do you feel most confident in is going the right to ship and turn things around now that they look at a record that isn't as favorable as you would anticipate?
Yeah, I think that it's a hard question to answer because for me, I just really believe in Andy Kennedy's coaching ability.
Mhm.
Like that's the one that really stands out to me. The thing that's so hard with UAB is the fact that they lost 100% of their scoring from last year to this year. And so,
So
I
did
mean,
Memphis and so did North Texas. So that's a
exactly.
common theme here,
Yes,
just to let it be
exactly.
known.
And so, because my other one that I was thinking, it was hard to pick one, Memphis, just because of the legacy that they've had in that program with Penny Hardaway at the helm. But I go back to UAB because it's so hard. Like, here's the thing: I've seen Penny Hardaway lose 100% of his scoring. It happened 2 seasons ago to last year, and then he had PJ Haggerty and Dane Danger, and they were fine and they gelled and they meshed. So I was pretty confident about the ability of Memphis going into the season. I'm like, they did this last year. It's fine. They were one of the best teams in the country, but so far that hasn't panned out yet. And so I think that Memphis and UAB, right now, I feel like I have the most faith in just because I've seen those coaches do great things with those programs. That doesn't mean Ron Hunter can't do it with Tulane and North Texas either. But for me, those two like really stand out. But it's hard to tell because even when we were talking about Memphis 2 weeks ago, if you would have told me this would have been their record when we came back on this show, I would have said no way. I
Yeah.
was like, it's Memphis. They always find a way to win in the American, and they just haven't yet this season. So yeah, I don't know. That was a 2-part answer to your question, but it's hard for me to pick just one.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's going to take closing the gap, and somebody
Yeah.
up at the top of the conference is going to have to fall in order for teams like North Texas and Memphis and UAB to like actually right the ship that they've had. Now, Memphis is not going to have the year that they had last year. They've already lost more conference games than they did all of last year. But I can see Memphis being better in the long run than teams like Temple and Charlotte and Wichita State, the teams that are directly above them. Do I think they're on the same playing surface as Tulsa, South Florida, and Florida Atlantic? I don't think so right now, but we've also turned that around. I think North Texas might be who they are, and we'll see what ends up happening as time goes on. This is another team that's been decimated with the injury bug. They're missing their 2 more dynamic and unique scorers on their roster right now, one of which is Will McClendon, who we talked about earlier in All-American episodes, out for the year. He was probably their number 1 scorer. So they turned around, and Jay Stevenson's been a guy that they've had to rely on from a scoring element. David Terrell Jr. has stepped up in a big way, scoring wise for North Texas. But they might be who they are in 2025, 26 now, and Josiah Shackelford, who is probably their most uh, dynamic big man outside of Dylan Arnett, he's down with a day-to-day injury. Who knows when he gets back in the fold? So I think there's a lot of what ifs with North Texas. It's year 1 of Danielle Robinson. I think he's a phenomenal coach as well, kind of like what I talked about with Michael Schwartz. Connects with his guys. People want to play for him. People believe in what his vision is. It's only a matter of time until they start becoming a contender. It just may not be this year. So they may be right. Tulane, I don't know what to think about Tulane right
I
now.
know,
I,
I know.
I'm I'm a
I was
little I'm
really
a little
hot.
disappointed
Yeah.
because they were so good to start conference play, and I was so
Mm,
bought in what they were doing, and I still could be. But
yeah.
right now, when you've lost four straight, there's only so much you can talk about from a hope standpoint. You got the player of the year in the conference on your team, so that's one thing. But when you lose to UAB, North Texas, FAU, Charlotte, and then you get South Florida, Memphis, Wichita State, Temple right in a row, you don't get any sort of let up. You don't get any sort of take a step forward or take a day off type of break. You got to win those games if you're Tulane, and that's where it's going to start for me moving forward.
Yeah, I agree on the Tulane end of things. I expected a little bit more, especially 2 weeks ago when we talked to Corey Glore and everything that he was saying about them. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. This is the American. This happens all the time. Teams move up and down like this, so it may be a completely different discussion 2 weeks from now. But before we even get to that part of the discussion, I want to take a look at the schedule for the upcoming couple of
Yes.
weeks because I am excited about some of these matchups for sure.
Some really good games on the horizon in the American. You take a look at the schedule here, and I think the number one thing that stands out to me is there's a lot of national television coming up over the
Heck
next
yeah,
couple of
we
weeks.
love
So
that.
put the teams on notice. I think that South Florida and Tulane game coming up tonight, I think, is a great matchup in New Orleans. That's going to be a good one. Late start time, 8 o'clock Central Time. Ooh, New Orleans is drivable for me.
You
Hold
out?
on now.
You out?
Hold on now.
Hmm.
I've got to. Hold on. I may be down there. I may need to hit up my friend Corey Glore. We may be going to see a basketball game tonight.
And
We'll
what
see.
did you want from football? A hot dog, right? And
Yeah,
you
hot
want a
dog and a
hot
press
dog?
pass.
Yeah.
I'm an hour and a half from New Orleans right now.
Ooh, okay.
I've got a rental car in my name, so let's
All
see.
right.
And prepaid
And
gas too, so we're good.
oh, you're
We're
in
rolling.
business. All
We're making
right.
it happen
All
now.
right. So Kyle may be in New Orleans for that game. We don't know. Let
I'm
us
about to
know.
make some changes in my game plan. Or some of the other games that we need to look at. Florida Atlantic and Memphis, ESPN2 tomorrow night. That's going to be a banger of a game. Can't wait for that one. And then another South Florida matchup. How about that? They go Tulane, then Temple. Bang, bang, just like
Yeah.
that. Coming up on Saturday. Another game that I was looking into possibly attending. Can't wait for that. Any games that stick out to you?
I like the South Florida Temple game. I think that's
Yeah.
going to tell us a lot about Temple because we want to see. And honestly, the Charlotte Temple game is going to tell us a lot about this conference as well because we just talked about are we underestimating Charlotte and then where does Temple stand? So I think that's going to be one that I'm really looking forward to as well. And then I think any game that Tulsa's involved in, it's fun to watch because they have been
good
so
point.
good. So, I almost forgot the Florida Atlantic Memphis rematch. Like, talk about pettiness.
Ooh, yeah.
I think that one. I'm just watching all of them. But anyway, that for the pettiness, and I'm not only going to watch the game. I'm going to watch the social medias after the game because that's
Yeah.
my favorite part.
Of course. And you talked about Tulsa there. Any game they play has been fun. We got a chance to catch up with Miles Barnstable this week and talk about some of the fun that the Golden Hurricane have been having.
You never know whether they're going to let off the gas a bit or if they're going to bring the heat. They're bringing the heat. Here goes Riley, lopped it up. Back door! Miles Barnstable, you've got to be kidding!
Hey, yo.
Now joined here on All-American by Miles Barnstable from the Tulsa Golden Hurricane, the high-flying Barnstable, as I like to say it. One of the walking highlight reels and a mainstay in our American top plays of the week. Miles, thanks for taking some time. It's been a fun last couple of weeks for you guys. What's been one of the biggest keys to get back on track and to really establish yourselves as contenders in the American Conference?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just us staying focused on what we need to do, kind of taking each day, day by day, and kind of really locking into the things we need to buy into as a team, and that's kind of what's been helping us right now.
When it comes to the depth of this Tulsa team, we just talked about it earlier in the show. There's a lot of talent around here for Tulsa and for this squad. What's different about this team and what you've seen from some of the other stops in your collegiate career?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, there's just so much depth on this team, and there's so many guys who can do so many things, and it's not a team where we rely on one or two guys or just a few guys to kind of help us win. Honestly, anybody on the team can have a night for themselves. Anybody in the rotation can have a night, and it's good to have guys who can do so much and have so many guys who can do different things as well for us.
Miles, this team starts off so hot in non-conference play, and then you stumble a little bit at the beginning of conference play and then rebound really quickly. What was the messaging like after those couple of losses early on to kind of get you back on track and then come up with the big wins that you had after that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was mostly just kind of not being so comfortable. I think as a team, we kind of got a little comfortable after seeing the success that we had, and it was just it was I wouldn't say it was good for us to lose those games, but it was kind of a wake up call for us. Like we can't it's not going to be easy like how we thought it was going to be, and that it's going to be hard each day, and every team we play at this point, especially in conference, is going to be a tough game to win.
What's been the biggest identity of this team? Because as we talked about earlier in the show, Tulsa has led the American in a number of different categories. What are you guys trying to achieve in terms of the identity of the squad?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we know that offensively, like we have the tools for that, but for us, really right now, we're really focusing on our defensive aspect right now. That's something we want to have as an identity of us. We want to be kind of top 3 of the league there in defense, and that's something important for us that we think that will really help us get to where we want to go.
And what are some of the ways you guys are trying to take steps in the right direction on the defensive side?
It starts in practice. It starts each day, kind of, especially watching the film, understanding what we do need to work on as a team, and then being able to execute that in practice at a high level and at a high intensity in practice.
Miles, you individually just look like you're playing with so much confidence right now on the court. Where does that confidence come from? And did you work on anything in the offseason that assisted in that confidence?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is just the work that I put in. I just kind of have a confidence in myself for knowing how much I do put into my game, and it's also my teammates and my coaches as well as how much they trust in me, and I can feel the trust they have for me, and kind of just my role on the team gives me the confidence to kind of play how I'm playing.
When you talk about the trust that your coaches put in you, we've talked a lot on this show about Eric Conkle. What is his coaching style and what do you guys like so much about it? Obviously, it seems to be working with your record right now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's definitely a player's coach. He's really close with us, and he really allows us to kind of work into our strengths and do the things that we're really good at. And I think that's a lot of the guys enjoy that, to be able to kind of play their game instead of having to step outside of what they're used to.
He's one of my favorite coaches to talk to in not only the American Conference, but really across the country. What's your favorite Coach Conkle story that you can share on air? Let me be very clear here, but what's your favorite story, or maybe even just an interaction that you enjoyed along the way?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's always cool to hear his stories about like back in the WIAC from where I came from in D3. It's always to hear him talk about it and what it was like when he was there too. It's just a cool way to relate for us.
Okay, so you talk about that. Is that something that you noticed when you were in the middle of your recruitment to Tulsa and that you connected on initially?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was honestly one of the first things he was kind of talking to me about, because it was just a first topic we could relate about, kind of. So I mean, it was something we talked about kind of early on, and that we kind of would joke about or tell stories about. So
It's awesome.
I love that. All right, Miles, we have you on top plays. I swear it's like every other week with a different dunk. And just a quick preview, because top plays haven't happened yet in this show. You will be on again this week. So I need to know, when you are like mid-air, are there any thoughts in your head? And like, how do you just go for it? I need to know the thought process behind some of these crazy dunks that you've had in American Conference play.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely a mentality. I mean, you kind of got to go up strong. You got to when I'm gonna try to dunk the ball, that's all I'm thinking about right when I catch the ball. Almost like it's really a mentality when I'm going up. It's not really something where like I just randomly decide to go do it. Like I'm thinking about it sort of. So I mean, it is fun though. It's definitely fun to kind of be able to attack the rim like that.
Can you guess which one we have on this week? And then we'll see if you're right later on.
Uh is it a dunk or is it a play?
It's a dunk, yeah.
Um, I don't know. I remember I had one against Rice, but that's the only one that's really coming to mind right now.
Yeah. We'll see if you're right.
Yeah.
We're not going to tell you. You'll have to tune into Top Plays to see if you're right. But this has been so much fun, Kyle. You got anything else for Miles before we let
I
him
was
go?
just going to ask, when was the first time you dunked a basketball? Like what age group or what age were you when you first dunked?
Yeah, it was probably um I think I was going into my junior year of high school or maybe during my junior year. So yeah, it wasn't too early. I mean, it
And who was
was
the first person, or when was the first time you put somebody on a poster? Because it's happened a lot since then.
I'd probably say maybe not in game, but I'd definitely say it was one of my brothers, if I could say.
That's awesome.
I think that's
Miles
the best
Barnstable,
person.
that's great. Good stuff, my man. Appreciate you taking some time. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Good luck the rest of the way. We'll be watching and cheering on from the American Conference office, and it's going to be a fun year for sure. No doubt about it. Thanks again.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Catching up there with Miles Barnstable, that was fun getting to talk to him and kind of hear a little bit about Eric Conkle and company. I was hoping he would give me an actual story there. I was hoping he would actually go into it and give me something from Eric Conkle because he is such a lively personality and somebody that these players really enjoy playing for.
Yeah, he has to keep it close to the chest. Maybe by
Mm.
conference tournament time, he'll be like giving us all the good details, but we'll
Let's
we'll
just get
have
him
to wait
back
and
on.
see. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I
we'll
mean,
get him
with the
back
way
on.
he's been playing, it would be no surprise with me if we had him on for another guest, as another
Yeah.
guest, because he's been incredible all season long. And we teased it in that interview that Miles Barnstable is in top plays this week. So let's take a look at all of them from this past week. We'll start off in Charlotte, who's hosting Florida Atlantic. Princess Anderson dribbles through the defense, Euro step, and the bucket. It's been a few weeks since we've seen Tulsa men's basketball in top plays, but we had to bring them back, especially when Miles Barnstable does things like this. He's a walking human highlight reel. I'm excited for number 3 because we have some beautifully executed basketball. TJ Williams to Will Berg, then to Karan Boyd, who slams it down. Ball movement executed perfectly. Temple women's basketball went 2-0 this week. Kayla Turner was a big part of that. Here she is against South Florida. The reverse, and the and one, count it! Owls win this one. More Temple in top play number 1. That's Darian Ford. The spin cycle. Are you kidding me? Okay, so do you approve of my choices of top plays?
I do. I do approve of the choices of top plays. I think it's funny because we're not in studio. I don't get to bring my own weird energy at the end of it all. But you know what? I'm going to give you credit. You're doing it from the comfort of your own home. You're still providing the content that American Conference fans want to see. And I thought you did a great job of picking the top 5 plays.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Next week, we'll be back in studio, but that's going to do it for us today. For Kyle Youmans, I'm Maria Trivelpiece. This has been another episode of All American, this time live from home. We'll see you next week in Studio A.